Nope. Okay, so let's see, what are we doing today? Alright, I need to open the chat room. There we go. Kiwi, I think, is going to bed, so he will not be joining us today, but let's see. We're building something about what goes in Christmas stockings. Donut chart, we're gonna use the one from yesterday, except we're gonna add tooltips because a lot of people have been asking about how to add tooltips to their D3 charts and stuff like that. So let's see, how do we do that? What goes in stockings for Christmas? Okay, so we're gonna download the data set and open it up. Is it still the 9th? It is the 9th. Okay, so we're not that late. Cool. Oh, it's linking to the wrong data set. Let me fix that. Christmas stockings. I know I have a data set for that, but I can't spell Christmas stockings. Okay, gifts likely to be put in Christmas stockings. Come on, I have an account. No. Login. Okie doke. Let's see if the login works. Yeah, it puts me back. We take the XLS and we're gonna copy that and save it in random coding. Where is DataViz Advent? DataViz Advent. Source. No, public. No, static. Datasets. Save. Oh, yeah, replace. And I'm gonna reopen VS Code, and this is gift stockings. So gift stockings index, and we fix this thing here. XLSX, XLSX. Now we minify this bastard, and we open the data set. Let's see. Hey Floody Boy, that's a really cool nickname. Special characteristics, parents at least likely. We have 2,000 people who responded to the survey, and we have not that much data, but we have some data, and I think these are gonna add up to more than 100%. Yeah, 500%. So we take this stuff and we're gonna make a new code sandbox as usual. So the beginnings of these projects are always the same. So fork that bastard. Should we use hooks for this one? We'll see. So public new file data.tsv, paste it in, and we say thing gift stuffer, because they're stocking stuffers, right? Stuffer and percent or percentage. Let's call it percentage. Cool. So now first thing we need is to let's do it with hooks because hooks are cool. Let's see, React, and we would like the latest React stuff, and we would also like React DOM, the latest React DOM stuff, and we're gonna need D3 because D3 is convenient for all sorts of things, and let's start with that. So D3 source index.js, here we have the app. We're going to use state and use effect. We're gonna use effect to load stuff and state to stuff. I wonder. I wonder if we can make a generalized hook for this sort of thing. That could be an interesting library to make. Yeah. Okay. Let's try defining it as our own hook, because this is a pattern that's been repeating a lot. So let's say function use data, and it's going to take, what's it gonna take? I don't know, but it's going to const state use state equals const state set state, or let's say const data and set data equals use state that begins with null. Then we have use effect, which is a function that loads TSV. Actually, let's do it this way. Use effect load data gets the set data function, and when that runs, it returns nil, and it only runs when data is undefined, and it returns data. Okay, so use data takes a load data function. So here we can now say const data equals use data with a method that takes set data and does all the usual stuff. d3.tsv loads it from data.tsv and then runs a console log like that. So import asterisk as d3 from d3. Let's see. Cool. So we have that, and we need to parse it a little bit. So our parsing function is going to say stuffer is d.stuffer and percentage is number of d.percentage, like that. So we now have a loaded data set, non-chocolate candy, has some percentage and so on. Cool. So we got that. Let's, and here, then we call set data. And here, if we console log our data, we should see that this approach works. It does. Yay. Okay, great. So we have our thing loaded. And is this worth open sourcing? What do you think? Let's ask the internets. The internets are useful for these things. Export to PNG. 5. Okay, go to Twitter and ask away. Right. So I'm blocking Twitter right now, so it helps me focus, but I really want to do this. Let's see. Pa-pam. Worth open sourcing this. Yeah. Tweet. Perfect. Okay, great. So here we were. we gotta update our titles. What goes in Christmas stockings? And we say this is ReactVizHoliday day 6 or 7. I think it's day 7. Day 7, yeah. Wow. Did I set it correctly here? Okay, I did. Cool. So doing this, ReactVizHoliday 7, we update ReactVizHoliday day 7. And greet. No description, create one. Perfect. Okay, so we got that stuff. The next thing we need to do is what? Wow, okay. So we got our data. Now we're gonna copy the pie chart from the donut chart from the other day, because that will make our life easier. So that way we can focus on tooltips today instead of rebuilding the entire pie chart thing. So I'm gonna be lazy and copy paste. But if you were doing this in like a more serious manner, you would like build a library for yourself or something like that. So we do source new file stock.donut.js. Stock donut is a bad name. Stocking donut. Stocking. So my keyboard is still messing up, and the keyboard people still haven't replied about whether they still make keyboards or not. So we're gonna also need D3 SVG Legend and D3 Black Box and Chroma.js. So Chroma.js, add that, D3 SVG Legend, add that dependency, and D3 Black Box. These are all things that make it easier for us to build stuff, so we don't have to, you know, keep doing it from scratch. Stocking donut, blah, 3 donuts, stocking donut. Cool. So we're gonna need, let's see, index.js. Here we're gonna say SVG with a width of 800 and a height of 600, and import stocking donut from /stocking donut. In the SVG we are going to render set stocking donut, which gets our data, I believe. What else does it need? So that's the stocking donut, reads percentages as values, gets the how it needs X, Y, and R for positioning and for radius. So we say X equals 300, Y equals 250, and want to do a radius of 150, let's say. And we need to say that we are rendering this only once the data actually exists. Aha! Okay, so that worked, mostly. Now we need to make sure, let's see, inner radius, outer radius, some padding. The color set doesn't have enough colors for us, so that's gonna have to change, and this is going to be d.stuffer. Cool. Okay, and I think we can keep this interaction, but perhaps we don't need the stuffers. Let's see. legend scale dot title equals hello. Let's see if that works. So I think there's some delay between the chat and what I'm saying, so it's sometimes hard to tell what you're commenting on. Yeah, I don't think we need the legend. The legend isn't very pretty. So, but let's keep it for now. We need a color set with more colors though. So let's stop console logging the data because that's unnecessary. And here, selected the index, blah blah blah. Let's console log the chroma. Let's console log the color scale dot domain dot length, or I guess we can do data dot length. Let's do data dot length. So we're trying to find out how many different colors we actually need. And we're also going to console log so chroma.brewer will tell us what all the different data things are. So we need 12 different colors, which means we need to pick a color scale that has at least 12 colors. And I think that gives us two options. Paired. So we can use paired, or we can use paired or set tree. So let's try that. What does it look like if we use paired? Okay, not too bad. Set 3. Let's go with set 3. I like these colors. Or do you think they're too light? Should we use set 3 or paired? I think set 3 looks better, even though the colors are lighter and there's like less contrast. We can fix that with... Let's get a nice picture of a Christmas stocking. Christmas stocking fireplace. Images of Christmas stockings with fireplaces. Let's make it a GIF. Settings, tools, type, animated. Any type, GIF. Perfect. So we're gonna copy image address. Okay, it's moderately reasonable, and we're gonna use that as our background. So I'm gonna open, let's see, if we take the, oh, I know what we're gonna do. We're gonna go here, and this div is going to have a background. Class name app. Let's see. Background URL. Damn. Okay, that is way too dark. Background size cover. Wonderful. That works, doesn't it? I think that works. Let's see. Filter blur 0.2. Filter blur 50. I don't know how to blur things anymore. Filter blur it needs pixels. Filter blur 5px, but that's gonna blur everything. Okay, what if we say dot app after say content bam background size cover filter. So that's gonna give us a blurred background, but we say position absolute top 0 pixels, left 0 pixels, and dot app is going to have position relative, let's say width 100% and height 100%. That kind of worked. What if we say before instead of after? Oh, right. So it needs position absolute, z index 0 -1. Perfect. So we now have a blurred background that makes everything look a little bit nicer and is animated. So here we're gonna say color white. Cool. We would need to make this white as well, but we're getting rid of it anyway, so it doesn't matter. Let's give it some opacity as well, 0.8. .9. There we go. So that looks better now, doesn't it? Great. Yeah, I think the stream is behind. I am already using index z with -1 to make it look good. I wonder how much delay there is between me and YouTube. I've heard that it looks better on Twitch. So we have that. Now stocking donut. We're gonna keep this interaction but make everything else. Let's see, so we have our path. We said we're getting rid of the legend because it's not that useful. So I'm gonna take it out. We're keeping USD3. No, we're not keeping USD3 because we're not using it. And like that. Cool. So we now have just this thing. Should we add? Okay, we need to move it further to the right because it's not nicely centered. 350. That's gonna look good. Okay, so we got that. Now let's see. When we mouse over, we still have the set selected effect, so we're gonna keep using that to know what is currently being selected, and we can add some styling to have a cursor, a pointer cursor, pointer. Okay. Now, how do we add a nice tooltip to this? Let's see. One way is to add a title that says d.stuffing, or was it stuffer? And title and path. So now if you mouse over for a long time, nothing happens, but a tooltip, a small system tooltip is supposed to show up. So that's not working, which means we're gonna have to do something else. What if we need to have a global tooltip that we are going to I think this is where React portals come into play. Let's see how that works. It's been a while since I tried doing React portals. React portal. Hi, Einbisken. Yes, this is the pie chart. It's the same one we used yesterday, so we just copy pasted the code, and now we're gonna add tooltips. I seem to have forgotten how portals work. Render React DOM, create portal, parent, handle click, on click, handle click, model, child. And that child... Okay, let me see this in CodePen, because it has been a while. So our model is a component did mount, appends child, remove child. What? Parent. This is kind of weird. Okay, so it renders children into the element, and the parent renders a model. What? These two containers are siblings in the DOM. So app root and model root. So the models adds itself to the model root, which is okay. So the model component creates a floating element of some sort. Let's see. It sounds like this could already be a solved problem, but for shits and giggles, let's try to solve it ourselves. There's almost definitely a React tooltip library out there, but we're gonna create our own. So we're gonna use an SVG tooltip because that's gonna give us better positioning. Yeah, so we're gonna say this is a tooltip, like that, and this tooltip I don't think we actually need portals for this, do we? We probably do. Let's try it first. So import tooltip from /tooltip and new file tooltip.js, and the tooltip is going to be import react from react, and it's going to say const tooltip equals a function that returns a grouping element positioned at translate X and Y and G, and inside it's going to render, I think we can embed HTML, which is going to make our life a lot easier. So let's see, SVG, embed HTML. I know there's a trick. HTML. I know there's a way to do this, I just need to find the site that tells me the trick. Foreign object. Okay. Do we care about Internet Explorer? No, we don't. So we're gonna say we are rendering a foreign object, and this foreign object is going to be children. Cool. So takes X, Y, and children. Wonderful. Whatever happened to simple coding? So a React portal is a way to have a child of your component that doesn't actually render as a child of your component, but renders somewhere else on like somewhere. And the reason you would want to do that are like tooltips and modals and stuff like that. So I'm trying to figure out how to get it working, but I have a feeling we're not gonna need it. So we're gonna see what happens. Right now we're exporting the tooltip and just getting it working. So the tooltip itself is first gonna render at 100 X and Y 100. Oh, and it's gonna need to have a. So here inside the tooltip we're able to use normal blah. Thank you, Ahi. I'm glad you enjoy it. Let's see. Hello, tooltip world. Okay, and okay, cool. But we know it also needs a width and a height. So we're gonna say width of 150 and height of 60. I don't know. For an object, width equals width, height equals height. So width and height. Cool. So this is our tooltip now. The cool thing is that because we're using for an object, it means we can render pretty much anything in here, any sort of literally and pretty much anything that's HTML we can render inside an SVG. That means that we could also have SVG nested inside HTML nested inside SVG, but that becomes really weird really fast. So the next thing we need to do is figure out how to move our tooltip around our thing. So when we hover over a slice of our donut, it becomes the selected slice. We need to communicate that info to the tooltip. So how do we do that? I wonder if use context could be a good thing for that. Let's see. Use context. I know that's a thing that exists. Hooks API reference. Use context. Context object, the value returned from React create context, and returns the current context value as given by the nearest context provider for the given context. When the provider updates, this hook will trigger a re-render with the latest context value. Right. Okay. So let's create a context, and I think we're not gonna need portals after all. So we create a new file and we say stocking context, stocking context.js, or actually this can just be part of our donut. We don't need a separate context, do we? Because the tooltip can actually be rendered in the donut component. What do you think? Should tooltips be part of the actual donut component, or should they be separate? No, they should be separate. It makes more sense to keep them separate. So we're gonna create a stocking context JS, and this is going to import React from React, and we're going to const context equals React create context with a default value of null. Yeah, and we export default our context, or I guess we can just do it this way. Export default React create context. Yeah, now we go into index.js, and here we say import provider from import context from /stocking context, and here, or let's do it this way, context with a capital, const data use data, and we're gonna say const So yes, the tooltip could be a child of the donut, but it makes more sense to have a global tooltip for our entire visualization, because then it can jump between different donuts if we choose to render different donuts, and we can actually do that later. So we got the tooltip, or rather we created the context, so we can say const let's actually call it tooltip context. So I'm gonna rename this sucker and say tooltip context JS. Where are we? Tooltip context index.js. So const context tooltip context is going to be use context calling to, actually we can make that part of the tooltip itself. That makes more sense. So okay, I keep moving things around, I know. So const context equals React create context that starts with null. You export default tooltip and export context tooltip context Cool. So we have that, which means our app.js doesn't even have to use the context because the tooltip has the context itself. I think. We will see how that works. So import tooltip from /tooltip. Okay, so that's the tooltip. Or I'm kind of confusing myself here. I haven't used context with hooks before, so I'm getting confused. But let's see. We need a function that updates the state. Right. So we're going to use tooltip and tooltip context here. Or not. Okay, let's use them in stocking donut. Is definitely going to need tooltip context. So say import tooltip context from ./tooltip. And we're going to say const tooltip context equals use context of tooltip context, and we import use context. Now let's see what happens. Can we console log this? Console log tooltip context. Let's see what we have. So it's null. That's great. If we change it to be hello, it's going to say hello. Perfect. So that works. Now, how do we update the context? Like, we need to listen to events and change stuff. And usually that was done with set state. Null. So context starts with null, and stocking donut, once it's hovered, needs to give some info to the tooltip context, right? What happens if we just change it? No, that's not gonna work. Okay, I need to look at an example code. Use context example. No, set data is wow, of course Kent C. Dodds wrote about this. No, that's the new context API with providers and stuff. So here the idea was that we would have consumers and providers and then use use context hook example. There we go, Dave Sidia. He's also cool. Okay, so create context, returns a provider and a consumer. Use context. Okay, the use context way. So use context number context value Okay, so but how do I change the value? Use context. The standard way is that you have a provider with a value, and how do you change the value? Yes, the answer is 42, but how do you change it? Nav user avatar provider. Okay, let's look at the providers. Oh, I know. We still need a provider because that provider changes the value. We trigger the provider by store. Yes, so we need to re-render the provider, and that changes the value. So that's why we used to use setState. Okay, so we still need providers. Cool. So here we have the tooltip context, which is not going to be that useful. Let's see. Let's go back into app, and the app is going to do what? Well, if we put it in the app, then we no longer really need the context, do we? Okay, let's see. Let's see. Import tooltip and tooltip context. Tooltip context from tooltip. Here we say const data equals use data, and we say const const tooltip and set tooltip equals use state. Yeah, tooltip and set tooltip is state that starts with null. Then we render a tooltip context.provider with a value of tooltip, and tooltip context provider. Cool. Tooltip set tooltip, and let's say that our default value for the tooltip is going to be x of, let's say, show is false. Then we have x of 0, y of 0. Okay, now the tooltip is going to be consuming this context and getting x and y positions, and let's just hard code the width and height. I have a feeling I am overcomplicating this, aren't I? So we got the tooltip, x and y. So set tooltip also needs to become part of this thing. Yeah. So in that case, why aren't I just passing it all in, right? Because they could be very far apart. We don't know that they're all children here. Meh. Alright. So we got that. So stocking donut. show false x, y. Yeah, so this must be why people keep asking me how to make tooltips, because turns out it's like, it's not a hard problem per se, but deciding how to organize it so that it's understandable is pretty difficult, it turns out. So let's see, stocking donut uses the tooltip context, and on mouse over, instead of set select, it also does set selected, but let's do mouse over of d.index and mouse out, mouse over no. Then we have const mouse over equals a function that gets an index and does a couple of things. First, it sets selected of index, but yeah, potentially, and it calls tooltip context.set tooltip with a bunch of info. First, show is going to be true, or rather, select slice. Show becomes true, and x and y have to be, what should the x and y be? They're based on the arc centroid. So let's do but our arc centroid is not very well defined. That's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna take this and we're gonna change it into an arc component, and that way the context stuff is gonna make a lot more sense as well. Yes, right. So we take this stuff out. No. Yeah, okay, for starters, let's just set the x and y to 100. Select slice is not defined because this needs to be called select slice. True. So if index is not null, then we set show to true, otherwise it's false. Now inside the tooltip, or rather here index.js, we now have set tooltip, which is a method that sets the tooltip, but we have to pass it into our context as well. So the context is going to be our tooltip plus set tooltip. Like that. Cool, now let's check this guy and say const tooltip context equals use context of tooltip context, and in here we can call it just context, and we import use context as well, and this needs to become a more normal function. We return this like that. Okay, so we now have context that's gonna tell us x, y, and whether we're showing it. So context.x, context.y. Actually, we can just do it this way: x, y, and show. So we still have x, still have y, and let's show is false, x is 0, y is 0. That's the default context state. We take these x and y, and here we say style is How do we hide something? Display hidden. Display hidden. The display property. Visibility hidden. Cool. So we say visibility is hidden if show is so we have visible and hidden for visibility depending on show. Aha! Okay, so that works. Look at that. Got that. Okay, so we now have a tooltip that shows and hides based on what's going on. The next step is getting this tooltip to only show up when what did I want to say? Oh, we need to position it properly. Now for proper positioning, we're gonna have to make an arc component because it's going to need to know arc stuff. So we say const arc equals a component that gets an what does it get? It just gets the data point. So data point and a radius. That's what comes from the outside, and it does all of this stuff. So we're gonna take the arc generator from here like that, and we're gonna take the path. The path is going to now generate an arc. It says data point is D, and we're gonna see what else we need. So arc, here we return a path, and we're gonna say, oh, and we're gonna also know whether we are currently selected, and we're gonna get a select slice method as well. Are selected and select slice. Cool. And let's, instead of data point, let's call it D because that is more usual. So D selected equals whether selected is the same as d.index, right? Yeah. And set selected is going to be set selected, or rather select slice. It's going to be called select slice. Select slice is select slice. Should it be on select slice? On select slice. On select slice. Selected on select slice, and we're gonna move all of this stuff to the inner and outer radius here. Color, we can just get the color, so we're gonna take this and accept the color, and this is going to be on select slice and on select slice, and color is going to equal color of a certain index. We have to take it here, color. Why is that not working? So we're still iterating over. If selected is the same as the index, color is color. So why aren't our arcs getting generated? Let's see. Okay. Are we even trying to render them? So translate. Okay, so we are trying to render them, but everything looks really weird. Like there's no data. So console log of D. What is that gonna say? Data, index, value, start angle, end angle. So that should all work. Why isn't it? Console log arc of D. Oh, because of this. Potentially because of this. We're just interested in whether we are currently selected, and we print out arc of D to see if it's generating stuff. No. So the problem we have right now is that all of our paths have suddenly turned into essentially undefined paths. What does just the arc generator look like? That looks correct to me. So one of the downsides of coding straight in Code Sandbox is that there's no Git to jump back to a certain point. So I am left trying to figure this out from scratch. Selected is whether selected is currently the same as index. On select slice we have select slice. Color. Okay. What if we have a static outer radius? Outer radius is just R and inner radius is just 50. Please work. No. But the good thing is that we have yesterday's donut code. So we created an arc with an inner radius and an outer radius. That is the same as here, an arc with an outer radius and an inner radius and some pad angle. So that should be fine. And when we call it, let's see. Okay, why can't I do edit on Code Sandbox? That's weird. What happens if we take out this stuff? So that still works. And that still works. But for some reason, in my case, it's generating empty paths. Also, how long have we been doing? Oh, I forgot to start my timer. So arc returns a path with Einbisken asks if when coding I visualize the components first in my mind and then work backwards. Kind of. It's kind of an iterative process. I get an idea of where I'm trying to go, but then I also adjust path as I'm going there and seeing what's working and what isn't working and how it's turning out. So I kind of do a bit of both, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense, but I do something in between having a full idea of how it's going and not. But right now I'm just trying to figure out why my arc generator isn't working. Yes, each child needs to have blah. Let's do that. Key is d.index because that is a good enough key for me. Doesn't make any sense. Okay, let's try doing it from scratch. So we have const arc, which is a D3 arc. And how do D3 arcs work? D3 wiki API reference arc. The whole reason we're taking it out of the main component is so that we can do arc.centroid, you'll see. So we create an arc and we do stuff. So d3.arc console log of d and arc of d. And everything just generates empty paths. But if we say arc.outer radius is 150, now it's working, it's returning nuns here. Okay. And if we say inner radius is 0, perfect. But if it's 50, cool. And pad angle 0.01. Oh, I know what was wrong. We forgot to pass in the R. So the radius r equals r. So now we can copy all of that stuff back. Outer radius is if selected, then it's r plus 10, otherwise it's r. And inner radius if selected is r minus 40, otherwise it's r minus 35. Selected. Okay. Selected equals d dot index. Cool. Let's make them a bit fatter. Okay, so we got that functionality back. That's working. Now, when we mouse over, let's do this: mouse over and mouse out, and we can take the context from here, move it into our arc component, because we don't need it here. So const mouse over equals a function that does stuff. First of all, it runs on select slice with d.index, because now we are in the context of a particular slice, so we don't have to be general anymore. And const mouse out, equals blah, and that's going to call on select slice of null, and it's going to run tooltip context set tooltip with show is false. How can I add transitions to the active arc? It depends on what kind of transition you want to make. So what kind of transition are you interested in? But we can try that. It's a little harder because you have to, like, CSS transitions aren't great at handling SVG objects that well, but I think we do have an example with transitions. You can we can check transitions out here. So okay, we got that. Now tooltip context, here where we want to set the X, we're going to say arc.centroid. And what does arc.centroid return is the real question. Console log arc.centroid. Oh, arc of D of centroid. And actually, let's in fact no, is it arc.centroid of D? Yeah, cool. So that gives us an X and a Y. So we can do it this way: arc.centroid of D 0 and arc.centroid of D 1. That's kind of working, I guess. But what's wrong with it? Oh, I know what's wrong with it. We need to make sure our offsets are obeyed. Yeah, so here you can see that we have an offset. Where is it? The X and Y offset here for the entire thing. So how do we take that into account in the arc itself? Let's see. So it doesn't make sense for the arc component itself to know the offset. So talking about what I'm doing actually helps a lot with focus. Other than that, I often write things down. But it helps if I'm doing something that's like interesting. It's much harder for me to focus on things where I am not that interested. So this is an interesting little puzzle to solve, so it's fun and I'm enjoying it, and because I'm explaining how everything is working, that makes it easier to focus. So yeah, it doesn't make sense for each individual arc to know the full offset, which means here the donut should know that. So should we be... Yeah, I guess the donut should know the context and we shouldn't be using it directly in each arc, which means we have to go back to the previous model of doing things. And I thought I was being so clever. So on mouse out, we call onSelectSlice with null, and otherwise we call onSelectSlice with d.index. Let's do it this way: index, yeah, index null, index and x and y, like that. What are you complaining about? on mouse out calls onSelectSlice with index of null. So onSelectSlice here gets an index, an x, and a y. So setSelected is the index, and if then we call tooltip context.setTooltip with show is whether index is if index is not null, we show, and we say x and y. Oh, and x is x plus okay, let's call them offset x and offset y, because the problem here is that we started shadowing different constants, different function arguments, because we're nesting functions in functions and it's starting to make a mess. So we're gonna say x plus offset x, and the y becomes y plus offset y. Cool. So here we have to change how we call it. Offset x, offset y. Aha! Isn't that wonderful? So we now have it showing up at pretty much the middle of our component of each arc. So let's change that a bit and move it out. So we're gonna say offset x plus 100. Let's do plus 60. Plus 70, maybe plus 70 plus 30. Or maybe we can do just plus 30 so that it's a bit removed from the mouse. And it would be a good idea to put it on the other side if it's we can change left and right orientation. But first, here when we are defining the tooltip, where are we? Here, the tooltip should have some prettier styling, and we're gonna do that yeah, let's add a title. Detail is empty, or content is empty. So our content is going to be stocking donut. Here when we set the tooltip for the content, we're gonna say data of index dot stuffer. So here we're gonna no, not in index.js, we're rendering tooltip.content. Let's see. Okay, so that's working, sort of. No, it's kind of struggling. Oh, right. If index is not null, then we set stuffer, otherwise we say empty. Now it's gonna work. Cool, so that's working. Floating blah blah blah. Okay, now let's make it prettier, and we're gonna call this a styled p. Do I have styled components? Let's add styled components. So styled components, and we're going to remove D3 blackbox and D3 SVG legend because we're not using them. So here we're gonna say const tooltip p equals style.paragraph that has a green background. Should it be a green background? Is that a clapping emoji? Background green. And we said, oh, and I know that we have to d3 lighten the green. So we're gonna say d3.color.lighten or brighten. Oh no, chroma has that. Let's start with just green. Background green, border radius of 3 pixels, and padding of 1 em. Let's see what happens. And import styled from styled components. Oh, because I'm not using it. So tooltip p, yay, chocolate candy, fruit, and stuff like that. Cool. So we got that. It's kind of working. Now let's see if Chroma has some nicer colors for us. Chroma.js. Chroma.js, V's for net. That's a really cool domain name. Cracker Ice. Okay. Chroma.js. Let's see. Darken, saturate. Okay. Cool. So we're gonna import chroma from chroma.js, and we're gonna say chroma of green dot brighten dot hex. Okay, that looks better, doesn't it? What else can we do? Saturate. Ooh. Brighten dot saturate. Not sure what that does actually. To green. Okay, so we're gonna just use chroma brighten. Cool. Okay, that's working. Now let's flip them left and right. So we're gonna say stocking down at here. We're gonna say it is left if orient left if x is to the right, to the left side. So if x is less than, if offset x is less than radius divided by 2. Let's see, if offset x is less than 0, because the center of our donut is 0, 0, so it means if we're on the left side, it's going to be on the left. So tooltip is now gonna get an orient left property from the context. Orient left, and it's going to use orient left to decide what. Okay, if orient left, then x becomes x minus width, otherwise it is x. So on the left. Okay, that's kind of working. See, if I don't use this, if it's x both times, then when we're on the left, it shows there. Otherwise, it shows kind of on the other side. Cool. So I'm gonna call this good enough for what we were building here, and I'm gonna Oh man, that's gonna be a lot of writing tonight. So I'm gonna go write a tutorial for what we did today, because I think it's gonna help me understand what we just did, and I'm pretty sure it was potentially confusing to everyone watching. And I have to write a weekly newsletter for tomorrow, so that's gonna be interesting, but totally doable. So thanks everyone for watching. I will see you again tomorrow evening when we are going to do, what is the next one? Tomorrow evening we are going to play with calendars and when people buy candy the most. I think that's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, this is good enough for now. Thanks for watching everyone. I will see you tomorrow.